Last week, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsened due to ongoing Israeli military operations and severe shortages of food, water, and medical supplies. The situation, already dire, has reached a critical point, with the UN warning of an imminent famine in northern Gaza. Millions of Palestinians are trapped in a conflict zone, facing constant bombardment, displacement, and the loss of basic necessities. Hospitals are overwhelmed, children are dying from malnutrition, and the threat of a full-scale ground invasion looms large. Tonight, we'll break down the key developments from the past week, examining the escalating violence, the deepening humanitarian crisis, and the stalled efforts to secure a ceasefire. The Israeli Defense Forces continued their air and ground operations across Gaza last week, with a particular focus on Gaza City, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. These areas have been under intense bombardment, with airstrikes and artillery fire causing widespread destruction and chaos. The relentless attacks have left residents in a state of constant fear and uncertainty, as they struggle to find safety amidst the ongoing violence. Airstrikes targeted what Israel claimed were Hamas positions, but the reality on the ground tells a different story. Civilian infrastructure, including homes, schools, and hospitals, has been severely damaged or destroyed, raising questions about the true targets of these operations. We've seen images of entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble, with countless civilian casualties reported. Families have been torn apart, and the death toll continues to rise as rescue efforts are hampered by the ongoing conflict. Adding to the devastation, the Al-Shifa hospital in northern Gaza, already struggling to function with limited resources, was raided again by Israeli forces. This hospital, one of the few remaining medical facilities in the area, has been a lifeline for many, but its ability to provide care is now severely compromised. The IDF claimed Hamas fighters were using the hospital as a base of operations, but these claims have been disputed by international observers. The presence of armed groups in civilian areas complicates the situation, but the impact on innocent lives cannot be ignored. The raid resulted in further damage to the already crippled hospital, further jeopardizing the lives of patients and medical staff. The destruction of medical facilities has left many without access to essential healthcare, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Disturbing reports have emerged from the vicinity of Al-Shifa Hospital, alleging mass arrests and extrajudicial killings of Palestinian civilians by Israeli forces. These actions have sparked outrage and condemnation from human rights organizations around the world. These reports, if confirmed, paint a grim picture of the situation on the ground and raise serious concerns about potential war crimes. The international community is calling for thorough investigations to hold those responsible accountable. The international community has condemned the ongoing violence and called for an immediate ceasefire, but these pleas have fallen on deaf ears. Protests have erupted worldwide, demanding an end to the bloodshed and a return to peace talks. As the bombs continue to fall, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza deepens, pushing the already beleaguered population to the brink of collapse. The lack of food, water, and medical supplies is creating a dire situation, with many fearing for their lives and the future of their community. The United Nations has issued a dire warning. Famine is imminent in northern Gaza. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, and the international community is on high alert. Over 1.1 million people, more than half of the population, are facing catastrophic hunger, deprived of food, clean water, and essential supplies. The scale of the crisis is unprecedented, with families struggling to survive day by day. The already dire humanitarian situation has been exacerbated by severe restrictions on aid deliveries imposed by Israel. These restrictions have created a bottleneck, preventing much-needed supplies from reaching those who are most vulnerable. While some aid has trickled in, it's a mere fraction of what's needed to avert a full-blown catastrophe. The limited supplies that do make it through are quickly exhausted, leaving many without any form of relief. The images coming out of Gaza are heartbreaking: skeletal children clinging to life in overcrowded hospitals, where medical supplies are running dangerously low. The healthcare system is on the brink of collapse. Families scavenging for scraps of food amidst the rubble, searching desperately for anything that can sustain them. The destruction has left many without homes, forcing them to live in makeshift shelters, and a sense of utter despair settling over the besieged population. The psychological toll is immense, with many losing hope for a better future. The UN has reported at least 27 children have died from malnutrition and dehydration in recent weeks, a grim testament to the severity of the crisis. Each death is a tragic reminder of the urgent need for action. Aid organizations are struggling to reach those in need, hampered by Israeli checkpoints, bureaucratic hurdles, and the constant threat of violence. These obstacles make it nearly impossible to deliver aid efficiently. The international community has pledged millions in aid, but without unfettered access to Gaza, these funds will remain largely useless. The money is there, but the means to deliver it effectively are not. The world is watching as a humanitarian catastrophe unfolds in slow motion, a stark reminder of the devastating human cost of this conflict. Global reactions range from outrage to despair, but action remains limited. The question remains, how many more innocent lives must be lost before a lasting peace is achieved? The call for a resolution grows louder, but the path to peace remains fraught with challenges. Over 1.5 million Palestinians displaced from their homes by the relentless bombardment are now crammed into makeshift shelters in Rafah, a city in southern Gaza bordering Egypt. These shelters, often nothing more than tents or hastily constructed shacks, offer little protection from the elements, let alone the ongoing conflict. Families huddle together, trying to find some semblance of normalcy amidst the chaos. Rafah, already struggling to cope with its own population, is now bursting at the seams, its resources stretched thin, and its people living in fear and uncertainty. The influx of displaced individuals has led to severe shortages of food, water, and medical supplies, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian situation. The local infrastructure, never designed to handle such a large population, is on the brink of collapse. Adding to the tension, Israel has signaled its intention to launch a major ground offensive in Rafah, raising fears of a bloodbath. The sight of Israeli tanks and military vehicles massing near the border has only heightened the sense of impending doom among the residents. Many fear that a ground invasion would lead to widespread destruction and loss of life. The international community has reacted with alarm, warning of the potential for mass civilian casualties if Israel follows through with its threat. Leaders from around the world have called for restraint and urged both sides to seek a peaceful resolution. The United Nations has issued statements condemning the violence and calling for immediate humanitarian aid to be allowed into the region. The United States and the European Union have urged Israel to reconsider its plans, emphasizing the need to protect civilian lives and find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Diplomatic efforts are in full swing, with high-level meetings and discussions taking place in an attempt to de-escalate the situation. However, the path to peace remains fraught with challenges. Despite the international pressure, the situation in Rafah remains extremely volatile, with the threat of a full-scale invasion casting a long shadow over the city. The people of Rafah are doing their best to prepare for the worst, but the uncertainty and fear are palpable. Many are fortifying their homes and gathering supplies, unsure of what the next day will bring. The people of Rafah are caught in a terrifying limbo, trapped between the prospect of a renewed Israeli offensive and the closed border with Egypt. The border crossing, a potential lifeline for those seeking safety, remains shut, leaving families with nowhere to turn. The sense of entrapment is overwhelming as they wait and hope for a resolution that seems increasingly out of reach. The world watches and waits, hoping for a diplomatic solution, but bracing for the worst as the crisis in Gaza reaches a fever pitch. News broadcasts and social media are filled with images and stories from the region, capturing the attention and concern of people worldwide. The hope is that international pressure will lead to a de-escalation, but the reality on the ground remains grim. Hopes for a ceasefire were dashed last week as indirect negotiations between Hamas and Israel, mediated by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, broke down without any tangible progress. Hamas, the militant group that controls Gaza, has demanded a permanent ceasefire and a complete Israeli withdrawal from the occupied territories as preconditions for any truce. Israel, on the other hand, has insisted on temporary pauses in the fighting and the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The two sides remain far apart on key issues, with neither willing to compromise on their core demands. The collapse of the latest round of talks has deepened the sense of despair in Gaza and raised fears of a prolonged and even more brutal conflict. The international community has expressed its disappointment over the stalled negotiations and urged both sides to return to the table and engage in good faith efforts to find a peaceful solution. However, with mistrust running high and neither side showing any willingness to back down from their positions, the prospects for a lasting ceasefire remain bleak. As the humanitarian crisis in Gaza deepens, a wave of outrage has swept across the globe, with millions taking to the streets to demand an end to the violence. From the streets of New York to the heart of London, protesters have marched in solidarity with the Palestinian people, condemning the Israeli offensive and calling for an immediate ceasefire. The protests reflect a growing frustration with the international community's failure to stop the bloodshed and hold Israel accountable for its actions. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has faced particular criticism for its repeated vetoes of UN Security Council resolutions condemning the violence. The Biden administration has defended its position, arguing that a ceasefire must be negotiated between the parties involved, not imposed by the international community. However, critics argue that the U.S.'s unwavering support for Israel has emboldened the Israeli government and undermined efforts to achieve a peaceful resolution. As the protests continue to grow in size and intensity, the pressure on world leaders to take concrete action to end the crisis in Gaza is mounting. The situation in Gaza is a stain on the conscience of humanity. The images we've witnessed this past week, the bombed-out hospitals, the starving children, the families huddled in fear, should shock us all into action. We cannot and must not turn a blind eye to the suffering of the Palestinian people. We must demand better from our leaders, urging them to prioritize diplomacy, de-escalation, and a just and lasting peace. The people of Gaza deserve to live in dignity and security, free from the constant threat of violence and oppression. Let us raise our voices in unison and demand an end to this senseless bloodshed. Please like and subscribe to reach 10,000 before 2026. O Lord of the worlds, grant them victory over their enemy. Comment below. Amen.